This is the largest financial experiment ever conducted on humanity, and you're part of it whether you agreed or not. Right now, global debt is over $300 trillion. Governments borrow trillions like spare change. Central banks create money out of nothing. Families sign 30-year loans without a second thought, and we're told this is normal. But history tells a darker story. Every civilization that drowned itself in debt believed it was different, right until the collapse. Debt isn't just money, it's power, control, and when it grows too large, someone always pays the price. The real question isn't if the system breaks, it's who gets crushed when it does. Want me to make this even sharper? This is the greatest financial experiment in human history, and most people don't even realize they're living inside it. Global debt, public, private, household, corporate, has exploded to levels no civilization has ever carried before. Today, governments borrow trillions as if it were nothing. Central banks create money with a few keystrokes. Families sign 30-year mortgages as casually as buying groceries. And yet, we still talk as if debt were normal. Harmless, permanent. The truth is far more unsettling. Debt has always been a tool of power, a mechanism of control, and a ticking time bomb waiting for the right spark. The real question isn't if this mountain of global debt will trigger a crisis. It's when and who will pay the price when the system resets. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to the very roots of debt itself. Debt is as old as civilization. The first clay tablets in ancient Mesopotamia, thousands of years before Christ, weren't poetry or philosophy. They were ledgers, records of who owed whom, how much grain, how many cattle. In those early societies, debt wasn't just economic, it was sacred. Priests and kings oversaw debts, enforced them, and sometimes erased them entirely through sweeping jubilees. Mass debt forgiveness designed to stop society from collapsing under obligation. Think about that for a moment. Ancient rulers understood something modern leaders pretend to forget. You cannot enslave an entire population with debt forever. Eventually, the system breaks. Fast forward to Renaissance Europe and the rise of powerful banking families, like the Medici of Florence. Debt evolved from grain and cattle into gold and credit. Kings and popes borrowed vast sums to wage wars, build cathedrals, and fund empires. But debt always came with risk. Spain, flooded with silver from the New World, declared bankruptcy 4 times in the 16th century. Even empires overflowing with gold can drown when ambition outruns reality. Debt was no longer just personal. It became geopolitical. It fueled wars, toppled dynasties, and reshaped the world. The modern debt explosion truly began in the 20th century. After World War I, nations carried debt so massive they were impossible to repay. Germany was crushed under reparations imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. Economists warned it would destabilize the country. They were right. The hyperinflation of the early 1920s, when Germans needed wheelbarrows of cash to buy bread, wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of debts that could not be paid in real terms. Debt became fuel for chaos. Then came 1944 and the Bretton Woods Conference, the moment the modern financial system was engineered. The United States, holding nearly 2/3 of the world's gold, set the rules. The dollar became the anchor, convertible to gold at $35 an ounce. Other currencies pegged themselves to it. The promise was stability. The reality was dependence. For a while it worked, but temptation always returns. By the 1960s, the cost of the Vietnam War and domestic programs pushed the U.S. to print more dollars than it had gold. Foreign governments noticed and began demanding gold instead of paper. In 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. Debt was untethered. From that moment on, governments could borrow and print almost without limit, constrained only by trust. Debt transformed from something finite into something infinite. Central banks learned to manipulate interest rates to steer the economy. Growth slowed, borrow more. Crisis hit, create more debt to patch the hole. Each rescue required more leverage than the last. The 1980s saw massive debt expansion across the world. Developing nations borrowed heavily, only to collapse into the Latin American debt crisis when rates rose. Then came 2008. The financial crisis wasn't really about housing. It was about debt stacked on debt, a fragile pyramid of leverage so extreme that when one corner failed, everything shook. Banks collapsed, pensions vanished, governments stepped in with trillions. And here was the bitter truth: those who caused the crisis were rescued, while ordinary people paid the price. Since then, the numbers have become surreal. Global debt has tripled in 2 decades, surpassing $300 trillion, nearly 4 times the size of the global economy. Japan carries debt over 200% of GDP. The United States adds trillions every year, without debate. Emerging markets borrow in foreign currencies, risking collapse when rates rise. The entire system balances on the belief that debt can grow forever. But debt always has consequences. It distorts behavior, creates bubbles, transfers wealth, and enslaves future generations. History shows us there are only 3 endings: pay it honestly and inflate it away, or default. No empire has escaped this reality. Today, debt feels invisible. Governments don't knock on your door, they issue bonds in your name. Credit cards feel like money. Corporate profits are juiced by borrowed capital. Leverage feels weightless on the way up and crushing on the way down. The U.S. national debt passed $34 trillion. Interest payments now rival military spending. The world's superpower borrows just to service past borrowing. Europe struggles under massive ratios. China hides debt inside shadow systems. Everywhere you look, the same pattern emerges. Debt buys time. Politicians love it until rates rise. And when they do, the predator wakes. So what comes next? History gives us the answer: inflation, restructuring, or default. Inflation is already here. It erodes your savings while shrinking government obligations. A silent tax. Politically convenient. Brutally effective. And once again, ordinary people will pay. Because debt isn't just economics. It's power. Who lends? Who borrows? Who gets rescued? When systems collapse, banks survive. Corporations restructure. Politicians retire. Regular people lose everything. That's why understanding debt isn't optional. It's survival. If you don't see the trap, you'll live inside it. History repeats. Debt builds. Leaders deny. Crises erupt. Systems reset. The only choice is whether you face that cycle blind or awake. If this changed how you see the world, subscribe. History has the answers.